forcing it down your throat doesn't make it feel like you have an option. And I will tell you that there have been so many times where commentary teams do not have that, and it's noticeably imbalanced. It is, you know, there's always got to be something for that. Now, historically speaking, the NWA has not usually traditionally had that. WWF had it, other places had it, but the NWA almost never had that kind of balance on their commentary team until it became something that was standardized really by Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan and a few others. You know, ultimately we got to see the Jesse Venturas of the world on commentary and things of that nature, but it was something that now in this moment we are getting a bit of that with Danny Deals and Joe Galley on the commentary team while Tim Storm is off because of some medical issues. Velvet Sky has left the commentary team to pursue some other opportunities for herself. And so Danny Deals is filling that role really nicely with NWA.
Yeah, you're so right, because they are killing it. And Joe was such a good, you could just tell he's a good dude in real life because of the fact what he kind of stands up for and what he really puts over the top when it comes to not only promoting what who the good people are, but what they stand for as well. And I love that about him.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting scenario right now with NWA because it's hard to tell without a Danny Deals who are the good guys and who are the bad guys in NWA. The lines are blurred for most people. And I think that that's something that Billy Corgan enjoys a bit. He allows the audience to determine who's the good and who's the bad. But at the same time, I do wish we had a little bit clearer boundary between the two. And Danny makes it a little easier to tell which side people fall on.
Now, you mentioned Billy Corgan. Do you actually call him Billy, or do you call him William, or Mr. Corgan, or what do you call him?
So I don't call him Mr. Corgan. He would never like that. Most of the time we do call him Billy. And if we're not referring to him as Billy, we will refer to him as WPC.
I have seen that he has been being touted as that recently, and I kind of like that.
Well, one of the reasons, too, people don't recognize that it's important to clarify which Billy you're talking about, especially in a backstage environment, because we have two Billies. We have Billy Corgan, who's our owner, and we have Billy Trask, who is our lead of production, and he's the executive producer of the shows. So if you just say Billy, it could leaves it open. And then there's other Billies too, maybe not as integral, but they're also Billies in the back. So it's one of those things where if you say, most people say Trask if they're talking about Billy Trask, or WPC if they're talking about Billy Corgan.
Now, I imagine you were at some point a Smashing Pumpkins fan. Did you ever at any point think that guy was going to be your boss and you get to call him Billy?
I was never a Smashing Pumpkins fan.
Really?
So, no, even though Smashing Pumpkins exploded into popularity, global success at a very integral time in my life. But that music was never my music. So, but the fact remains that Billy Corgan at that integral point in my life became one of the biggest rock stars in the world. So that has never been lost on me. Regardless, this is the thing, you don't have to be a fan of tennis to know that Serena and Venus Williams are the pinnacle, right? You didn't have to be a fan of golf to know a Tiger Woods or a John McEnroe. It's one of those things. Or somebody doesn't have to be your favorite, Lady Gaga doesn't have to be your favorite pop star to know that she's Lady Gaga. So while William Patrick Corgan was one of the voices of my generation, he wasn't a voice of mine. So but at the same time, he's Billy fucking Corgan. And so the reality that my boss, shows up on the Tonight Show or packs arenas globally or that I can call him Billy and that I can message him and he responds, that is never lost on me.
I would. It's amazing. So I've been lucky enough I worked in the wrestling industry locally for about a year and a half, and I was lucky enough to get people on my phone that I was like, how in the fuck do I have this person's number in my phone that I can just scroll through and be like, yeah, that person's there. And then now, like you're saying, you can scroll through your phone and yeah, Billy Corgan's there. No big deal.
Yeah, but you have to understand as well, like, and this sounds so arrogant when I say it, and I don't mean it to sound this way. But before returning back to the world of professional wrestling, I was, a regular professional journalist with writing for the Huffington Post for nearly a decade. And my entire beat was celebrities. That was my beat. That's what I covered. That's all I wrote about was celebrities. So the names in my phone right now are, if I scroll through it and I'm like, holy shit, I cannot believe that I have X, Y, Z, these people, and I don't want to name drop by saying that, but
I'll name drop for you. You've got some big names like some Katy Perry's, probably some Lady Gaga's, some, people of that level.
I don't have Katy Perry's phone number and I don't have Lady Gaga's phone number in my phone. Not anymore. Lady Gaga changed her number.
Not anymore. You deleted them at some point, or they changed their number. That's the level you're at.
Like Lady Gaga was in my phone for a little while. I did a 3-day mini tour with her. So yeah, there was a point where she was in my phone. But she, I'm sure, has changed that number, and I wouldn't know because I definitely wouldn't call it. So that's the distinction. You know what I mean? Like there's a huge distinction between having a number in your phone and feeling confident enough in that relationship to call that person on it. Right? So that's a big, big difference. And I will tell you, though, that I scroll through my phone, or there are moments that are absolutely mind-blowing because there are people in my phone who I message on a regular basis. There are the Mickey Jameses of the world and Lisa Marie Varon and Medusa. Dennis Condrey is in my friggin' phone. Like, I know this is not a name that, like, Dennis Condrey is in my phone, and he is somebody I do text on a fairly regular basis, and that I grew up, obsessed with his work in the Midnight Express. So there are those people in my phone, and I do feel comfortable enough that I would message them, and that is mind-blowing.
I love that. I love that you have that. The fact that you have different levels of like, well, I had their number, but they may not have that number anymore. But at some point you had their number enough to where it was in your Rolodex, and that you have the people that like, again, that inspired you to like really get to where you are today. Like, yeah, you had to go, not go through, but you had to be a writer first, and then you fully got into the wrestling world, and you have the music people as well. Like, I want to talk about your music. Like, where did that come from? Like, was that kind of always something inside you that you kind of wanted to do, or like, how did the music actually happen for you?
You mean making music personally?
Yeah, making music. Sorry.
I cannot believe that you're asking me about making music, because anybody who's listening to this, my music is horrendous. My music is
to you
horrendous.
maybe, but I guarantee there's somebody who's like, that's my jam. That's on my workout mix. That's on my dance mix. That's on my get hype mix. Like everything.
Yeah, I do believe that. But my in terms of my skill and talent at making music, it's bad. But what I will say is I've always loved music. I think that music is so I think it's so personal. Like and the reason that even though often when no, most people don't even know I've done music, but what I know for myself is this, like sometimes the quality of a song or whatever does not relegate it to any particular element of my experience with it. Like I may love something that may be legitimately horrible. I think about John Waters' films, and those films, some of them are just so bad that they're amazing, and he's a genius for that. So I think of my music in a similar capacity. It's pretty terrible, but a lot of people enjoy it because it was It's campy, it's funny, it is absurd. Those are all things that are me. But most of it's really well produced, by the way. So that is a big part of it. I think for me, a big thing was that I am someone who anything I've ever thought, even for a moment, that I wanted to do, I'm like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do it. Like, why not?
Wow.
Like, why can't I make a song? I mean, okay, so I can't sing. So what? Like, okay, so, I don't have any verifiable talent in this area. Who cares? I'm going to do it anyway. And it will be what it is. And some of the songs that I released, believe it or not, have been incredibly successful. Hitting charting on dance charts or performing really well internationally, where obviously apparently people have no taste whatsoever in music. But it was a dream come true for me, and it was something that I wanted to do. So I did it. I think that's really what it comes down to, whether it's about music or wrestling or journalism or being in a television product or a movie. Most of the time, it never occurs to me that I shouldn't be able to do those things. So I put my mind to it, and somehow I managed to do those things.
I love that because you're checking boxes as somebody like just growing up, and you're like, I want to do everything. And so you're like checking boxes. Like, are there boxes that you haven't checked yet? And are there also boxes that you feel like you've checked, but you haven't in your mind fully checked them yet?
Well, that is I think a challenge in my daily life. I'll relate to you a story. It's been heard before, but it bears repeating. And it was in a lot of ways, I think that I'm in a hangover state still from this experience that I'll give to you. And you'll understand why when I explain it to you. So I remember when I was 13 years old, maybe even younger, sitting in my family's living room, transcribing the words from a pro wrestling television show that was playing on our TV set. And my dream was that I would, at that time it was leading into the Crockett Cup in 1988. I was very young, so I could not have been 13, so it must have been before this. And my dream was that someday I would either work with the National Wrestling Alliance as a manager, and I would work the Crockett Cup event, because the Crockett Cup event was always my favorite. I'm a huge tag team wrestling buff, and I love it.
Nice.
So I was like, either I will work as a manager at the Crockett Cup someday, or I'm going to be a pro wrestling journalist covering the Crockett Cup or Pro Wrestling Illustrated. That was my dream. Like, one of those things was my childhood dream. And I remember so vividly, like, doing this, like making this pretend magazine and covering the Crockett Cup in my pretend magazine for whatever. So fast forward all these many, many, many years later, this year I'm in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, as a manager for the National Wrestling Alliance, managing the Thrillbilly Silas Mason into a national title shot at the Crockett Cup. And while all of this is going on, I'm reporting about the events of that weekend back to the people at Pro Wrestling Illustrated, where I have a column. And in that moment, I realized you have accomplished quite literally every single thing that as a child you wanted to do.
Right.
What do you do now? When you've accomplished your quite literal childhood dreams, what do you do? And that was several months ago, and I have been in what I consider a bit of an emotional hangover since then, because I don't know what it is I do want to do next. I don't have any unresolved dreams. And that is something that, for a person like me who is very driven by dreams and very motivated by what I need to do to move closer to those dreams, that's a dangerous place. So, I look at other things like, well, as a kid, I wanted to manage an NWA TV champion. I haven't done that. I wanted to manage the NWA World